Welcome to the Normal Christian Life Online, a weekly broadcast of Global Response Network meant to awaken, inspire, and motivate you in your walk with God.
Hi, welcome to the broadcast. This week I want to speak to you about something that's very, very important to me. Yesterday marked International Day of Prayer for the Persecuted Church all over the world. You know, in Hebrews chapter 13, in verse 3, it says, to remember those who are imprisoned or who are in bonds, as though you're bound together with them, remembering that you are also a part of the body. We have brothers and sisters around the world today that are in prisons. They are beaten, they are tortured, and many of them may even lose their life today for loving Jesus just like you and me. I've had the privilege, because of traveling around the world upwards of 50 times in my life, in places like Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Sudan. I've had the privilege of meeting people who have suffered for His name's sake. They've inspired me. They've given me courage to be the man that I have become. They have so impacted my life. They have helped change my whole thinking on life and what this means to be a Christian. I think about people like Pastor Richard Wurmbrand, who I had the privilege of meeting, the founder of an organization, a great organization called Voice of the Martyrs. And Pastor Wurmbrand was a pastor in Romania, and there was a time in Romanian history when the communists came in and they were trying to convince Christian leaders that communism and Christianity were fundamentally the same and that they could coexist. Pastor Wurmbrand didn't believe that. In fact, I remember reading the story out of his great book, Tortured for Christ, where his wife looked at him during that meeting and said, "My dear Richard, when are you going to stand up and wipe the spit off the face of Jesus? They're spitting on His face." And he looked at his dear wife and said, "If I stand up and wipe the spit off of Jesus' face, you will be a widow." And she looked back at him with love in her eyes and simply said, "My dear Richard, I'd much rather be a widow than be married to a coward." You know, Richard Wurmbrand stood up that day in the midst of all those Christian leaders and in the midst of all those communist leaders and said, Christianity and communism cannot coexist. I will serve Jesus and Him alone. As a result of that, Richard Wurmbrand spent 14 years in a Romanian prison. 3 of those years he spent 30 feet underground in a solitary cell, where the only person that he ever saw was the person that fed him and beat him. He told us stories about how he didn't have a place to relieve himself in his cell and that he would have to relieve himself on the floor, and the guards would take his food and throw it in his urine and make him lap it up like a dog. He told us stories about how he would have to get on his knees and guards would urinate in his face. And while the urine was burning his eyes, he would tell them about the love of Jesus. You know, I often think about Richard Wurmbrand. He's gone on to be with the Lord now. But I think about him. I think about what he said when he said that was God's school of love for him. Can you imagine that? Somebody urinating in your face, somebody making you lap your food off the floor like a dog, and yet you say, that's God's school of love for me? Richard Wurmbrand understood that it's easy to love people that love you back, but it's difficult to love someone that hates you. But isn't that what Jesus did? You know, I'd like to encourage you this week. Would you just take a moment and pray for your persecuted brothers and sisters around the world? You know, I'm not going to ask you to pray that the persecution would stop, but I'm simply going to ask you to pray that they would remain faithful unto death, that they would receive a crown of life. And friends, take courage in our persecuted brothers and sisters, and you go out and live the normal Christian life. God bless you and have a great week.
We'll connect again next time on the Normal Christian Life Online as we do our best to awaken, inspire, and motivate you in your walk with God.